Okay, so get ready to dive deep today, really deep into a world that's going to kind of flip how you think about intelligence. We're talking octopus.
Octopuses, yeah.
And we've got a whole spread of sources to wrap our heads around these creatures. We've got like personal reflections in the Chronicles of Daisy Crockett. There's this super concise but packed episode from BC Learning English. It's called 6-Minute English.
Hmm.
Then, of course, there's the Wikipedia rabbit hole on cephalopod intelligence. Some really interesting research from the Queensland Brain Institute, a good overview from Shape of Life, and then to kind of round things out, a look at the bigger picture, like the ethical side of things, from Yale E360.
Yeah, I think with all of these pieces, what we're really going to try and tackle, or at least get a little closer to understanding, is, this question that really blows your mind. Just how intelligent are these creatures?
Yeah.
And what does that intelligence, what does it feel like to be an octopus?
Right.
It's so different from our own experience.
Uh-huh.
And really, this exploration has huge implications for how we think about animal minds in general. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And, I think for me at least, what really stood out from all of these sources is how unexpected octopus intelligence actually is.
Yeah.
You have this invertebrate, and they often live alone. Their lifespans are relatively short.
Right.
And yet they're pulling off these incredible cognitive feats, things you'd usually associate with, I don't know, much more complex life forms.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. It's like defying expectations left and right.
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing is, when we even say an octopus is intelligent, what are we really getting at? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
I think that's a great place to start. The blog, the one from the Chronicles of Daisy Crockett, makes this really important point that defining intelligence, even just defining it, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really easy for our own human biases to creep in, And the post really pushes you to consider what might sentience, what might consciousness even look like in a creature that's so biologically different from us.
Yeah.
And the author, they argue that octopuses, they're really a key species in challenging our most basic assumptions about intelligence and awareness.
Like they're making us rethink the whole brain-centered view of intelligence.
Exactly.
Okay, so on that note, Wikipedia gives a more kind of general definition of intelligence. It describes it as the ability to learn, remember things, recall information, use information, compare information and skills, all of that.
Yeah.
And they're pretty clear that cephalopods are the most intelligent invertebrates out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that Wikipedia really points out that I think is so crucial is that their intelligence, it evolved completely separately from our own vertebrate line.
Right.
Their nervous system, it's just fundamentally different.
Totally.
And that gives us this amazing opportunity to really understand how intelligence can take different forms,
Yeah.
Like it's not just one way to be smart.
It's not just a human thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then there's that crazy fact from Wikipedia, too, about their brain-to-body mass ratio.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's the highest among all invertebrates, and get this, it even puts them somewhere between warm and cold-blooded vertebrates.
That's wild.
That's got to be a big clue, right?
Mhm.
That's got to be significant. Then you've got the BBC's 6-Minute English piece. They also talk about the size of their nervous system as this big indicator of intelligence.
Right, and the BBC piece, it has this interview with Peter Godfrey-Smith.
Yeah.
He's a philosopher of science, and he raises a really interesting question. How did these creatures, these largely solitary creatures, become so intelligent?
That is a good question.
Yeah, and he talks about this thing called their protean nature.
Protein?
Yeah, it's their ability to change shape and texture instantly. And, like us, they have senses of sight and taste. But the fact that they don't have a rigid skeleton, that incredible flexibility, it makes their experience of the world, their potential sentience, really alien to us.
Yeah, it's like trying to imagine, like, seeing the world through their eyes.
Right.
It's got to be just completely different.
Yeah.
So we have this idea that intelligence doesn't have to be tied to a backbone.
Yeah, literally.
Literally and figuratively. And Shape of Life, really, they capture this idea beautifully. They call octopuses brainy, colorful, fast, sophisticated, strange, inspiring creatures.
I love that.
Who've been around for 500 million years.
Wow.
And they also give us those classic, dictionary definitions of intelligence. They focus on problem solving and adaptation.
Right. And Shape of Life argues that octopuses, they fit those definitions perfectly. They do things that we clearly see as intelligence in other animals.
Yeah.
But what I found really interesting is they propose that octopuses might have a different kind of intelligence.
Okay. How so?
One that's distributed throughout their body,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like, given how soft their bodies are and how much they rely on camouflage and defense, it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay, so intelligence that's not all centralized in one spot.
Exactly, yeah. And Shape of Life also talks about how complex their sensory organs are.
Right.
And those would require a lot of processing power.
Wow. It makes you think of them as these sophisticated information gathering and processing machines, which isn't what usually comes to mind when you think of invertebrates.
Yeah, it's not the first thing you think of.
Right.
Right, totally.
Hmm.
So we're starting to get an idea of what their intelligence looks like from the outside. Let's kind of zoom in now on their brain structure, or maybe I should say structures.
Yeah, good point. So Chronicles of Daisy Crockett clarifies that unlike a lot of mollusks, octopuses do have a central brain.
Okay.
And within that brain, you have specific areas for things like short and long-term memory and for learning.
Right.
That's crucial.
Yeah.
But then the deeper you go, it gets really strange. Okay, I like where this is going.
Both Wikipedia and Shape of Life point out that, get this, about 2/3 of an octopus's nerve cells are located in the nerve cords of its arms.
Wow.
Yeah, and these arms, they can carry out these really intricate actions, like all on their own, almost independently of the brain.
So like each arm has its own little brain.
Kinda, yeah.
Oh.
It's like each arm has its own little command center. And Chronicles of Daisy Crockett even mentions that these arms, they can touch, smell, and taste things independently.
No way.
Yeah. And there's even some research suggesting that they might be able to sense light with their skin.
Oh, wow.
So the line between brain and body, like where one starts and the other ends, it gets really blurry.
It's like their whole body is a sensory organ.
Right, exactly. And, Chronicles of Daisy Crockett, they playfully call it having 8 brains.
I love that.
Which isn't technically accurate in the human sense, but it really helps to visualize how they can process information in this decentralized way.
Yeah, it's a good way to picture it.
Yeah. It's like they can focus on multiple things at once without overloading a single central unit.
That's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Queensland Brain Institute, they add this whole other layer to this.
Oh, okay.
Their MRI studies, they've shown that different species of octopus actually have different brain structures, which seems to be related to their environment, how active they are, and how much they interact with each other, their social behaviors.
So their brains have adapted to their lifestyles.
Yeah, exactly. It's like their specific niche in the ocean has shaped their brains.
It's like evolution in action.
Totally, totally. So, for example, you've got the deep sea octopus, and their brains are smoother, which kind of resembles the brains of some mammals that are known for having slower lifestyles.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Makes sense. And then you've got the reef octopuses, and their brains are much larger, much more complex. Kind of similar to primates in a way. They're adapted for these really intricate visual tasks and social interactions.
So intelligence isn't this one-size-fits-all thing.
Right, exactly.
It evolves to fit different needs.
It really does.
This is so cool. Okay, so we're starting to get a picture of how their intelligence works. Now let's talk about what they can actually do.
Right. Let's get into some specifics.
I mean, the stuff they can do, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, the demonstrations of their intelligence, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, where do we even start? Chronicles of Daisy Crockett and Shape of Life both talk about how they can recognize individual humans.
Right.
And not only that, they have preferences. They like some people, they don't like others, and they remember those preferences even months later.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's that story about them squirting water at people they don't like.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Classic.
It's like they have distinct personalities.
They do. They really do. And beyond those personal interactions, we have all these examples of their intelligence. They can navigate mazes by sight.
Wow.
They can solve really complex puzzles. Wikipedia gives some examples of them opening containers and figuring out latches. And they can create mental maps, which shows they have spatial learning. Both Chronicles of Daisy Crockett and Wikipedia talk about that.
That's amazing. And what about their ability to plan ahead?
Oh, yeah, that's incredible.
Like, that blows my mind.
Right. Both Chronicles of Daisy Crockett and Wikipedia, mention tool use.
Right, the coconut shell thing.
Yeah, like carrying coconut shells to use as shelter later.
It's like they're thinking ahead.
Exactly. They're not just reacting to the moment. And Wikipedia even mentions cuttlefish, which, in the same family, they show signs of future planning too.
So it's not just a fluke with octopuses, it might be a cephalopod thing.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah,
And that coconut shell behavior, I mean, that's really compelling.
it is.
It's not just about recognizing a tool, it's about knowing to keep it for later.
Right. That's a whole other level.
Yeah, it takes a lot of planning. And then you have all these cases of what looks like playfulness,
Yeah.
which both sources mention. It's like they're doing things just for fun, not for survival.
Right, like just because. That's amazing.
And Chronicles of Daisy Crockett points out that that could be a sign of a certain level of awareness.
Yeah. And their escapes. They're like little Houdinis.
Oh, yeah.
Chronicles of Daisy Crockett and Wikipedia, they both have stories of them getting out of their tanks, sometimes even raiding food from other tanks.
Right. And then sneaking back in like nothing happened.
Yeah, like, whew, me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they've even been known to open childproof medicine bottles.
I mean, come on. That's not just intelligence. That's problem solving with a little bit of mischief.
Right. Like they're figuring out how things work and then using that knowledge to their advantage.
Totally.
It shows how dexterous they are, like how good they are at analyzing and overcoming physical barriers.
Right. And speaking of dexterity, both Chronicles of Daisy Crockett and Wikipedia talk about their grip.
Oh, yeah, with their suckers.
It's like a pincer, like our thumb and forefinger.
Yeah, it's incredible how much control they have with those arms and suckers.
It's amazing. And then you've got their curiosity, their drive to explore, to figure things out.
Right.
Chronicles of Daisy Crockett talks about that.
Yeah. And we can't forget about their color-changing abilities.
Oh, yeah, their smart skin.
Right, their ability to change color and texture so quickly.
That's amazing.
Shape of Life calls it smart skin for a reason.
Yeah.
They use it for communication, for camouflage, for all sorts of things. And they can change shape, too.
Like masters of disguise.
Totally, totally. And the Queensland Brain Institute's research on collaborative hunting, that's amazing, too.
Oh, yeah, the fact that they hunt with reef fish.
Yeah, it shows they can communicate and cooperate with other species, which requires a lot of cognitive ability.
Yeah, that's not something you see every day.
Right. And Wikipedia mentions that they can remember solutions to puzzles and even adapt those solutions when the puzzle changes,
Wow.
which means they're not just relying on instinct.
Right, they're actually learning.
They're learning, exactly. And the fact that they do better in captivity when they have enriched environments, that tells us a lot too.
Oh, okay.
Wikipedia talks about this, about how they need mental stimulation, otherwise they can get kind of lethargic.
Like they get bored.
Basically, yeah. And there's that famous example of Otto the octopus.
Otto.
Yeah, he was in Germany, and he would do things like juggle hermit crabs and even short-circuit the aquarium lights.
That's hilarious.
It's like he needed to keep himself entertained.
He sounds like a character.
Yeah, he really does.
Oh.
And Shape of Life points out that they have both short-term and long-term memory, and some of the ways their brains form memories, it's actually pretty similar to vertebrates.
So they're learning, they're remembering, they're problem solving, they're planning ahead, they're even playing.
It's incredible.
I mean, this is a lot to process.
Yeah.
It really makes you question, our relationship with them and with animals in general. Like if they're this intelligent, how should we treat them?
Right, that's a huge question. Chronicles of Daisy Crockett really pushes us to stop underestimating the intelligence and sentience of other species.
Yeah.
It challenges that whole human-centric view of intelligence, the idea that our way is the only way. And the author argues that this understanding, it should change how we interact with all animals, not just octopuses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like we need a whole new perspective.
Right. And the blog post also talks about moving away from those old negative perceptions of creatures like octopuses.
Yeah, like seeing them as monsters or something.
Exactly. And Wikipedia touches on this shift in perspective too, with the mention of growing legal protection for cephalopods.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they highlight the growing scientific interest in octopuses, and they point out that places like the UK and the EU, they've already started implementing laws that recognize cephalopod sentience.
So like acknowledging their intelligence in a legal sense.
Exactly.
That's huge.
It is. And the Yale E360 article, it raises this fascinating evolutionary question.
Okay, what's that?
How did these creatures, these relatively short-lived solitary creatures, how did they develop such complex cognitive abilities?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We usually associate that kind of intelligence with mammals
Yeah.
with animals that have long lifespans and complex social structures.
Right, like us.
Yeah.
So how did they do it?
It's a mystery, and it really forces us to reconsider our assumptions about what drives the evolution of intelligence. Octopuses, they seem to have found a different path.
It's like they're rewriting the rules.
Yeah, they really are.
Okay, so I guess to wrap this all up, we've learned that octopuses have this incredible intelligence, this intelligence that's not only complex, but also structured in this totally unique way. It really challenges our basic understanding of what it means to be intelligent, to be conscious.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their decentralized nervous system, it gives them these amazing abilities like problem solving, communication, interacting with their world in ways we never expected.
Yeah. I think this deep dive leaves us with a really important thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Considering everything we've learned about octopus intelligence and sentience, what are our ethical responsibilities to these creatures?
That's a good question.
Especially as we see potential industries like octopus farming starting to emerge.
Right.
And how might our continued exploration of their minds change how we view life and intelligence? Not just here on Earth, but maybe even beyond.
That's a lot to think about.
It is, and it's something worth pondering.
It definitely is. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.
Yeah, see you then.